The girl had not spoken in 41 days, not to the school counselor who sat across from her with a yellow legal pad and a careful, practiced expression, not to her grandmother, who flew in from Georgia and filled the house with the smell of cornbread and old perfume and stayed for 2 weeks before going back to her own life. Not to the pediatric therapist with the fish tank in the waiting room, or the family friends who came by in pairs and brought casseroles in glass dishes and said things like she just needs time. And children are resilient while standing in the kitchen doorway, not knowing what else to do with their hands. 41 days. Imani counted them. She was 8 years old, and she had stopped talking the night her father told her that her mother was not coming home from the hospital. And the silence had settled over her like something permanent, like weather that had simply decided to stay. Valerie Cole had built her company from a spare bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, when she was 26 years old. She had $1,400 in her checking account, a laptop with a cracked hinge, and a problem she was convinced other people had too. The company was now worth $2.3 billion. She had been on the cover of 3 magazines. She had a house in Atlanta with more rooms than she used, and a driver who knew her coffee order, and a personal assistant who managed her calendar with the efficiency of someone managing a small country. She had not taken more than 4 consecutive days off work in 11 years. The school called on a Tuesday. Not about grades. Imani's grades were fine, technically. She was completing her assignments. She was showing up. She was sitting in the correct chairs at the correct times and writing the correct answers on the correct pages. But she had not raised her hand. She had not answered when called upon. She had not spoken to another child at recess, or at lunch, or in the hallway between classes. She had simply moved through the school like a current moving through water, leaving almost no trace. "We're not alarmed," the school counselor said over the phone, in the way people say things when they are, in fact, alarmed. "But we did want to bring it to your attention." Valerie thanked her and hung up and sat at her desk for a long time, looking at the view of the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office on the 22nd floor. She knew the silence. She had been watching it for 41 days from a careful distance, telling herself it was grief, that it would pass, that children were resilient. The same words the casserole people had used. She had been moving through her own days with the focus and precision that had made her successful, treating the problem of her daughter's grief the way she treated most problems, by giving it resources, by putting the right professionals in contact with it, by monitoring it from a respectable remove. She had not sat with it. She had not sat with Imani. There was a woman who had called Valerie's office 3 times over the past month. A former colleague of Imani's mother, a woman named Diane, who worked in early childhood development and had known Renee, Valerie's wife, since college. Diane had mentioned, twice, a woman she knew. A child grief specialist named Maya. Not a therapist in the traditional sense. Diane had been careful to distinguish this, but someone who worked differently. Someone who went to the child, rather than asking the child to come to an office. Valerie had not called back. She had been busy. She had been in Singapore, and then in Seattle, and then in Atlanta being busy about different things. But she picked up the phone now and called Diane's number, and Diane answered on the second ring, and by the end of the conversation, Valerie had a name. Maya Osi arrived on a Thursday morning in October, when the light in Atlanta was the particular gold of deep autumn, and the trees on Valerie's street were just beginning to let go of their leaves. She drove herself. She parked a modest gray sedan at the curb, not in the circular drive. She was in her early 40s, with close-cropped natural hair and glasses with thin tortoiseshell frames, and she carried a canvas bag over one shoulder that appeared to contain, among other things, a battered paperback, a small sketchbook, and a set of colored pencils in a cloth roll. Valerie had cleared her morning. She stood in the entryway and watched Maya come up the front walk, and tried to read her the way she read people in boardrooms, looking for the seam between what someone presented and what they actually were. Maya walked at an unhurried pace, not looking at the house the way most people looked at the house, not taking in the size of it, or the landscaping, or the cars in the drive. She was looking at the maple tree in the front yard, the one Imani had hung a rope swing from in the summer. It had twisted slightly in the wind and was turning slowly, the way things turn when no one has touched them in a while. "Thank you for coming," Valerie said when Maya reached the door. "Thank you for having me," Maya said. Not of course or absolutely, or any of the reflexive warmth that people performed when they wanted something from Valerie. Just, "Thank you for having me." Valerie showed her the house. Not the full tour, she kept it brief. The kitchen, the living room, the back hallway. She explained the situation in the language she had developed over the past weeks, for explaining it to professionals. Renee had died of a cardiac event, sudden, no prior history. Imani had been at school. Valerie had gotten the call at 10:47 in the morning and had driven to the school to pick Imani up herself. Imani had not spoken since that afternoon. Maya listened without taking notes. "Where is she now?" Maya asked. "In her room. She knows someone is coming. I told her you were a friend of Diane's." Valerie paused. "I didn't tell her why you were coming." "That's fine," Maya said. "I'm just going to see if she wants company." Valerie waited for more. An approach, a method, a framework, something she could evaluate. Maya had already turned slightly toward the hallway, her bag over her shoulder, the sketchbook visible at the top of it. "You can come," Maya said. "Or I can go alone. Either works." Valerie stayed. Imani's room was on the second floor, at the end of the hall. The door was open. It was always open now. Something that had shifted after Renee died, the closed door, giving way to the open one, as though the child had decided that the sound of the house moving around her was preferable to the silence of being sealed inside it. Maya stopped outside the doorway and looked in. Imani was on the floor beside her bed, not on the bed. She had a book open in her lap, though she was not reading it. She was looking at the window, at the maple tree visible from there, which was turning the same slow turn as the one downstairs. She was wearing a gray hoodie 2 sizes too large, and she had her knees pulled up. And she looked at Maya with an expression that was not afraid and not welcoming and not anything in particular. Just watchful. Maya sat down on the floor in the hallway, just outside the doorway, not in the room. She set her bag beside her and took out the sketchbook and opened it to a blank page and picked up one of the pencils. She did not say anything. Imani watched her for a moment. Then she looked back at the window. Maya drew. She did not draw anything specific at first. Shapes, the particular geometry of the hallway floor, the angle of light from the window at the end of the hall. She was unhurried. She had the quality that very few adults had in the presence of children, which was the quality of not needing anything from them. After perhaps 10 minutes, Imani shifted slightly. She turned the book over in her lap, face down. Maya did not look up. After perhaps 15 more minutes, Imani stood up slowly and walked to the doorway. She looked down at what Maya was drawing. Maya had drawn the hallway, the floor, the baseboards, the window at the end, the shadow of the stair railing on the opposite wall. It was quiet and precise, and full of a particular kind of attention. The attention of someone who had looked at a thing and decided it was worth seeing. Imani sat down in the doorway. Not in the hall, not back in the room. In the threshold, with her back against the doorframe, her legs folded. Maya offered her a pencil without looking up, holding it out to the side. Imani looked at it for a long moment, then she took it. Valerie found out about the drawing 2 days later from the housekeeper, who had been tidying Imani's room and found a sheet of paper under the edge of the bed. It was in pencil. A woman sitting cross-legged in a hallway, seen from above, as though the child drawing it had been floating at the ceiling, looking down. She stood in the doorway of her daughter's room, holding the drawing for a long time. She did not say anything to Imani about it. She put it back exactly where she had found it. Maya came on Thursdays, and then on Tuesdays also, and then, at some point in November, that Valerie could not precisely identify, she seemed to simply be there more often. Not in any way that felt imposed, but in the way that certain things gradually become part of the structure of a household without anyone formally deciding on it. She and Imani had a language that did not require words. They drew together. They built things from whatever was available, cardboard tubes and rubber bands, and the particular detritus of a child's bedroom floor. One afternoon, Valerie came home from a meeting and found them both on the kitchen floor, surrounded by what appeared to be an elaborate map of an imaginary city, rendered in colored pencil on 3 sheets of butcher paper taped together, with small folded paper buildings arranged across it. Imani looked up when Valerie came in. Their eyes met. It was just a look, but it was the most direct communication Imani had offered in weeks. And it lasted long enough that Valerie had to look away first, not because she wanted to, but because something in her chest had started doing something she was not prepared for in the kitchen in the middle of the afternoon. She said she needed to make a call. She went to her office and sat down at her desk and did not make a call. She began watching from a distance, not in a way she could have explained or justified, but in the way that a person watches something they have been afraid to look at directly, and are only now, slowly, beginning to be able to see. She watched the way Maya moved through the house, quietly, without claiming space, but not apologetically either. She watched the way Maya sat beside Imani and did not try to fix anything, did not try to ask questions that required answering, did not perform any of the careful professional warmth that Valerie had observed in every other person who had come to help. She watched the way Maya laughed sometimes, at small things. Something unexpected in a drawing, a card from a game they had invented together. And how the laugh was not manufactured to make the child feel at ease but was simply real, the laugh of someone who actually found something funny. She began to notice other things. The way Maya took her coffee, the particular expression she made when she was thinking, a slight shift in the angle of her head, the pencil tapping once against whatever surface was nearest. The way she said goodbye to Valerie when she left, always at the door, always with a brief, level look that felt, somehow, like an acknowledgement, not of Valerie's money or her status or the quality of her house, but of something more interior that Valerie could not quite name. In December, there was a night when the dinner Valerie had arranged ran late, and Maya was still at the house when the catering company came to clear up, and they ended up at the kitchen table for almost 2 hours, just the two of them, after Imani had gone to bed. They talked about small things at first. The City, a book Maya was reading. Valerie asked about how she had come to this work, and Maya told her, without drama. She had been a classroom teacher in Baltimore. She had lost a student she had been very close to. She had spent the years after trying to understand what it meant to be present with grief rather than managing it. Is there a difference? Valerie asked. Managing it means trying to make it smaller, Maya said. Being present with it means letting it be the size it actually is. Valerie considered this. That sounds harder. It is. There was a pause. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. The caterers were loading the last of the equipment into their van. The sound of the back door closing was very clear in the quiet of the kitchen. She talks to you, Valerie said. It was not quite a question. Maya looked up. Not yet, but she will. How do you know? Because she's choosing to be near me, Maya said. That's the first step. Language comes after. Valerie was quiet for a moment. She chose to be near Renee, she said, even at the very beginning. She was 2 weeks old and she'd calm down the second Renee held her, like she already knew. Maya didn't say anything. She let the sentence be there. I used to be jealous of that, Valerie said. The words came out before she had decided to say them. Which is, which is very human, Maya said. Valerie looked at her. I was never good at the sitting still part. Renee was. I was always the one who needed to be doing something. She looked down at her hands on the table. I don't know how to help her by just being there. I've never known how to do that. You're learning, Maya said. She's not talking to me. She sees you, Maya said. She watches you the way you watch her. You probably already know that. Valerie did know that. She had not allowed herself to think about it directly. But she had felt it. The particular quality of Imani's attention when she thought Valerie wasn't looking. The way the child tracked her through a room without appearing to. Maya gathered her bag from the chair beside her and stood. I should go. It's late. Valerie stood also, and they were close in the kitchen, close in the way people become when the space around them has contracted with the hour and the quiet. "Thank you," Valerie said. And then, because it felt insufficient. "I mean that differently than I mean it to most people." Maya looked at her steadily. "I know," she said. The first word Imani said was not in January as Valerie had hoped, or at Christmas, which she had half-consciously been building toward as a kind of deadline, a moment after which things would start to come back. It was on a Saturday in February, in the car, on the way home from the grocery store. Valerie had been talking, not to Imani, not really, just filling the silence the way she had begun to do, in the months after Renee died, narrating small things the way you might narrate a walk for someone who couldn't see. "The light is changing early now. It was still bright when I left the office yesterday. The oranges looked good. I got too many, but we can juice some of them." She had just turned onto their street. The maple tree was visible at the far end, still bare, the rope swing turning very slowly in the cold. Imani said, "Mama used to buy too many oranges too." The voice was rusty and small, the voice of someone who had not used a thing in a very long time and was learning again how it worked. Valerie did not stop the car. She kept driving, slowly at the same pace, because she understood, with some instinct she had not known she possessed, that if she stopped or turned around or made a sound that was too large, the moment would close. She said, she really did, every single time. Imani was quiet for a moment. Then, she said it was because they looked better in the store than they did in the kitchen. "That's exactly what she said to me," Valerie said. Almost exactly those words. They pulled into the driveway. Valerie turned off the engine, and they sat in the cold car with the grocery bags in the back, and Imani said, "I miss her." "I know," Valerie said. "I miss her too." She did not reach over. She did not make it into a moment. She let it be what it was, two people in a car, saying the thing that was true, the most ordinary and the most enormous thing in the world. "Okay," Imani said after a while. "We should get the groceries." "You're right," Valerie said. "We should." She called Maya that evening, after Imani was in bed. She did not plan what she was going to say. She just called. Maya answered after 2 rings. "She talked," Valerie said. There was a pause on the other end, not the pause of someone who needed the information repeated, the pause of someone receiving it fully, holding it the right way. "Tell me," Maya said. And Valerie told her. The car, the oranges, the tree at the end of the street. She told her all of it. And her voice broke once, near the end, and she let it. And Maya was quiet and present on the other end of the line, in the same way she was present in every room she entered, without performing anything, without trying to make it smaller than it was. "I didn't know how to be there for her," Valerie said. "And then somehow I was." "You were always there," Maya said. "You just couldn't see yourself doing it." In March, Valerie took 2 weeks off. She had not done that in 11 years. She turned her phone to the people who were paid to manage it. She told her assistant to schedule nothing, solve what she could, and escalate only things that were genuinely on fire. And even then to consider whether they were genuinely on fire or whether she was just accustomed to treating everything that way. She and Imani went to a house on the Georgia coast that had a porch facing the water. It was early enough in the season that the beach was mostly empty and cold in the mornings, but Imani wanted to walk on it anyway, and so they walked. Maya came for the last 4 days. Valerie had asked her with no expectation in either direction. Just an invitation, simple, offered once and not repeated. Maya had said yes. They were on the porch on the 3rd evening of those 4 days, after Imani had gone to bed, the water audible in the darkness below. There was a blanket over Valerie's lap. Maya had her sketchbook and was drawing something she held at an angle, so Valerie couldn't quite see it from her chair. "What is it?" Valerie asked. "The water," Maya said. "The way it looks at this light." Valerie looked out at it. The light was the very last of the evening. The horizon not quite dark yet. The water the color of something between silver and gray, moving steadily as it always moved, not caring about the time of day or who was watching. "Can I ask you something?" Valerie said. Maya looked up from the sketchbook. "Yes. Why did you say yes? To coming?" Maya was quiet for a moment. She looked back at the water. Because I wanted to, she said. Because this is a good place, and I haven't slowed down in a long time, and because she stopped. Because when you invited me, you didn't make it about what I could do for Imani, Maya said. You just asked if I wanted to come. That was the first time you'd ever ask me something that was only for you. Valerie considered this. She had been doing that more, asking for things that were only for herself. It was strange, still, like a muscle that had gone unused for so long that even light exercise made itself known. She said, I'm asking a lot of things only for myself lately. Maya looked at her directly. I know. The water moved in the dark. I'm not particularly good at this, Valerie said. The this was vague by design, encompassing a range of things she could not quite name sequentially. Neither am I, Maya said, but I think we've established that you learn fast. Valerie laughed. It was a real laugh, the kind that arrived without being summoned, and it surprised her a little by its own arrival. Maya was smiling. On the last morning, Imani woke up before either of them, and went to the porch and drew something in the small sketchbook Maya had given her. A green one, different from Maya's brown one. When they came out and found her there in the early light, the porch still cold, she held it out to Maya without being asked. Maya took it and looked at it. She was very still for a moment. She turned it so Valerie could see. It was a drawing of two women sitting in porch chairs, facing water. One of them had close-cropped hair. The other had her hair pulled back. The chairs were close together, so close the armrests were almost touching. Above the drawing, in the careful block letters of a child who has just come back to language, Imani had written 3 words. My whole family. Maya did not say anything. She held the drawing with both hands and looked at it, and her eyes were bright. Valerie looked at Imani, who was watching them both from her chair, with an expression that was older than 8 years old, the expression of someone who had seen something break. And then, slowly, piece by piece, seen it come back together, and who understood that these were not separate events but part of the same long thing. Thank you, Maya said to Imani. Her voice was steady, but only barely. Imani nodded once, solemnly. Then she said, There's pelicans on the water. I've been watching them. How many? Valerie asked. 7. They keep going in the same line, like they've done it 1,000 times. The 3 of them turned and looked at the water. The pelicans were there, just as Imani said, moving in a low, level line above the surface, so close to it that their wingtips nearly touched, heading somewhere along the coast, with the particular unhurried confidence of creatures who knew exactly where they were going, and had been going there their whole lives. The morning was just beginning. It was very quiet, and the porch held them all in the early light, the drawing in Maya's hands, the pelicans moving over the water, and nothing outside of that moment pressing yet. The day not yet started, the world still waiting a little while longer before it required anything of any of them.